Dumela. I will be doing IEB November 2024 paper 1. We will start with question 1. We are required to solve for x, all right? We have been given two brackets that are multiplied there. When brackets are attached to each other, they will be multiplied. It's considered to be multiplication. If there was addition in between, then they wouldn't be multiplied. You will have to break brackets and factorize in order for you to find your factors. But here, already this equation has been factorized. So what is this equation saying to us? This is what it's saying to us. It is simply telling us that the first bracket will be factor A is multiplied by the second bracket, which is factor B. And when you multiply these two factors, you will get a product of 0. The only way you can get a product of 0 is when one of the factors is equal to 0 or both factors are equal to 0. For example, 1 multiplied by 0 is 0. 1 is a factor, 0 is a factor. When you multiply those two, you get 0. 0 multiplied by 10, your product will be 0. X multiplied by 10 multiplied by 0, your product will be 0. Amazing, isn't it? Check this out. 0 multiplied by 0 will give you 0. Now you can notice that whenever a factor is equal to 0, your product, which is the result of multiplication, will be 0. So we've got 0 there as a factor and the product is 0. We have 0 there as a factor and a product is 0. We've got 0 there as a factor and a product is 0. Here we have two factors and both of them are equal to 0 and your product is 0. Going back to what we have, this simply means if we were to apply it here, it means that if we have A multiplied by B equal to 0, then A should be 0 or B should be 0 or both of them should be 0 because the product is 0. Please note that this does not work if the product is 1. Are we guys together? I'll explain that after I have finished this one. Okay, so what are we going to do here? All I have to do is simply take the first factor, which is x divided by 4 minus 1 equated to 0, or the second factor, which is x plus 2 equated to 0. So both of them will be equal to 0 because we know that one of them is equals to 0 and we don't know which one. So the safest option is to say that both of them will be 0. And then we can solve for x. These have turned to be linear equations that you learned in grade 8. Guys, moving from here, it should be easy for you. Now I'm going to start with the first one here. Now to solve for x in the first equation, which is a linear equation, we have equation 1. So this will be equation 1 here, and that will be equation 2 over there. Now in equation 1, what we're going to do is we are simply going to say x divided by 4, and I'm going to transpose this one to the right hand side. Please note that it is negative. Immediately it crosses the equal sign, it becomes positive. All right, so I will have isolated x divided by 4, which will be equal to positive 1. And then to simplify this, you will simply multiply both sides by that denominator because we don't want it, the denominator of 4. So I will simply multiply both sides by 4 over 1 and go to the side, multiply it by 4 over 1 as well. Now in the left-hand side or on the left-hand side, the 4's will cross each other out, okay? By now you should be knowing that, so I won't go through that thoroughly. So you will end up having x is equals to 1 multiplied by 4, which is equals to 4. Or in the second part of this equation, we have x is equals to, you will transpose this 2. When it crosses the equal sign, it'll become negative. We're transposing it to the right-hand side so that we can isolate x, which is the value that we are looking for. When you isolate x, it'll be equal to negative 2, and these will be your solutions. Now, I want to go back to what I said I'll come back to after solving for this. If here the product is equal to 1, right? Let's say we had all of that. Let me just write it down. X divided by 4 minus 1 is multiplied by x plus 2. And this is equals to, let's say, 2 over there. You understand that the product here is equal to 2. The same principle that we applied when the product is equal to 0 does not apply. Guys, if this is factor A, it's multiplied by factor B, and the product is equal to 0. We cannot assume that one of the factors is 2. We can't assume that. This only works out. So basically where we say A is either equal to 0 or B is equal to 0 doesn't work here when you have a number that is not equal to 0. When we have 2, it does not work, guys. We good? So here I can assume that because the product is equals to 0, then the product is equals to 2, then A is equals to 2 and B is equals to 2. I cannot assume that. Mathematically, that doesn't make sense. It only makes sense if the product is equal to 0. So if you're given a constant on the other side, or either side, if you are given a constant, you need to break the bracket, FOIL it out, then transpose, take all terms to one side, add or minus like terms, and then write it in standard form. The standard form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c. Once you have written it in this standard form, you can now factorize. If you can't factorize, which is what was already done for us here, they had already factorized for us. And when you factorize, whatever you have on the right-hand side must be 0. And once you have factorized, you can solve for x. But if you can't factorize, you have to use the quadratic formula. When you look at number 2, they want us to use the quadratic formula, which is that to solve for x, if 2x squared minus x is equals to 12. This is a quadratic equation, and to be honest, I can't do anything until I have written it in standard form, which is that form over there. To write it in standard form, I have to transpose 12. It is positive, so when I move it to the left-hand side of the equal sign, it'll become negative. Writing this in standard form, I will have 2x squared minus x minus 12 is equal to 0. Obviously, I can't factorize. Even if I wanted to factorize, they specifically stated that I need to use this quadratic formula. Now, this is in standard form. How so? To write it in standard form, it needs to be ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, where a is actually 2, b is -1, and c is -12. A is 2, b is -1, and c is equal to -12. Substituting these into the quadratic formula, I will have x, where there's b, I am going to substitute -1, where there is a, I am going to substitute 2, where there's a, I'll substitute 2, and where there is c, I will substitute -12. When you substitute, you learn this again in grade 8. Make sure you put the substituted value in brackets. So I've got negative, b will be -1, plus or minus the square root of again, where there's b, you substitute -1, minus where there's a, you substitute 2, where there's c, you substitute -12. This is divided by 2, where there's a, you substitute 2, and that's exactly what I have done. Wherever there's b, I substituted -1. Wherever there is a, I substituted 2. And wherever there is c, I substituted -12. Put this into your calculator. You've got negative This one doesn't have brackets. I wanted to write it in brackets. You can't put both plus and minus, so I'll just start with plus. This is in set form. You just have to go to this. So the first value will be x is equal to 2,71. They wrote it for us under instructions that if necessary, we need to round off our answers to 2 decimal places unless otherwise stated. So that's why I'm writing it as 2,71. Just to show you what I'm talking about. That was specified over there. And that's why I wrote it as 2,71. I am gonna go back to the calculator. All I'm going to do now is to go to where there was positive and just change that and make it negative. Press the equal sign, change it to a decimal. I'm getting negative 2,21. I will simply write it here as or x is equals to negative 2,21. That's it. That's all you were supposed to have done. Easy 4 marks, right? Perfect. Now here we have been given the inequality.